live.
Okay, welcome everybody.
Hello. So let's start with introductions as always. I'm the Lazy Warlock, Tony Mole. I'm the lead developer of Lords of Nysera, along with the artist, story writer, concept designer, and world builder. And today we're bringing to you a Feature Friday. So we haven't done a Feature Friday in a while, so this is going to be a very targeted discussion on a very specific feature of the game. In this case, it's going to be artificing. But before we get to any of that, who are you, Lilette?
Hey everybody, I am the producer for Lords of Nysera, so I do a lot of the marketing, a lot of the YouTube stuff, and I'm also doing some bug fixing and testing, so a little bit of coding. Tony's he's the lead developer, the lead creative, does all of the writing, everything about the game. I am play a complete support role, so really happy to be on the team, and that's what I do.
Well, so let's get right into it. So we're going to do a brief overview of what I've been working on lately, and then what this is all about. So just got off a few updates to the arena, or not the arena, the demo. Got some feedback from some people, and we are making changes. I already did some changes on AP usage, which is what you use for spells and abilities, as well as fatigue buildup, which will be a new feature that people haven't seen. It's kind of been in the works, and I finally kind of managed to figure something out that I think I like. So that's going to be in the next update. And then we've gotten a lot of talk about people not sure how to use Aniya, this second character that comes into play after the prologue starts. Now, we've had a lot of people that like Artemir. He's got a bow, and he kills just about everything he fires at. And we got Sholay, who can drop fireballs down. His flame attacks are very powerful, and he's got good stats in general. But Aniya is in this weird middle ground, and people have been really unsure what to do with her, her personality, and where she even falls into the story. And so we're going to be doing a rework of her character to better represent where she falls into the actual world and like kind of ethos even of the Nyserian culture. So people may not know this, but Aniya is an artificer. So it's not really conveyed very well in the prologue. That's why we're changing it. But she is a craftsman. Artificers are quite common in Nysera. They are people who take sort of mundane and maybe sometimes magical materials when they can get their hands on them, and they turn them into objects which can utilize the ambient magic that's everywhere. There's a little bit of steampunkiness to it. There's a little bit of natural science, actually, like actual normal physics, and then there's just the magic of the world. So but there is a system to it. So there's requirements for every type of artifact used, and there's varying levels of what they're used for. So some things are household items. There are literally household magical items that people use to heat their homes or cool their homes or wash dishes, junk like that, right? Things that you would use every day that you wouldn't think about, that don't have a place in warfare other than maybe like a field kit. But then there's the stuff that you use in battle, and lots of times it simulates magic, but sometimes it does things that not even magic can accomplish on its own, because artifacts typically are specialized. They do usually one thing, and they do it very well, sometimes better than magic can even do. And so Aniya here is meant to represent that, but we haven't really conveyed that. So we're going to be redesigning her, not only to represent like her Irvani heritage, because she comes from Irvan just like Sholay does, but what it means to look like an artificer in this world. And so as you can see from the screen shared here, there's a lot going on. namely these kind of dynamic action poses you've got here, because this is going to be what I imagine Aniya is doing, which is using her artifacts to fight. And she doesn't do that right now in the game. She has a sword, which she's not very good at using, and she's got a fire attack, which she's not very good at using. So she doesn't really have a valuable place in battle, and she has her healing stave, but that's only so useful when people can die in 2 hits early on. So we're going to try and make sure that she can be not only a useful supportive role, but also that she actually is prepared to fight and not just be, used to transport units and such. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to emphasize this ability? Well, we're going to add in a new type of weapon to the game. So originally artifacts were always kind of just, they simulate abilities, so you can cast fireball with them or something. But I've decided to start adding in weapons actually that are artifacts, and you can see right here is a little drawing I've done of one such item that I'm going to do for Aniya. And it's called a Valak lens. So this is probably the simplest artifice weapon, and all it is it's a gemstone that you hold with your hand. You can wrap the chain around your wrist so you don't lose it. You can hook it to things. It's like your everyday weapon for an artificer, and all it does is it's got this little sigil on the back that tells it what to do. So that's kind of how you can imagine every artifact. It's got this metal casing that holds some kind of focus, be it a gemstone or anything that can attract Vala, which is the magic of the world. And then it's got the metal kind of encases it so that it can control it. And then there's usually these inscriptions that they put into it, sigils and whatnot, that are actually programming. So they're literally simulating nerve pathways that the brain and the body use that is sort of blown up, and they have to etch it into the plates and everything. They etch it in and they fill it with different metals, and then it literally acts like a spellcaster. And so she's got one of these things, and what it does is it focuses magic, just pure straight magic, into this lens here, and it shoots it. It's pure unlike aspected magic. It pretty much just appears as really pretty light in this world, and it's not some blue arcane energy. It's actually, the people describe it in the world as your brain doesn't know exactly what to think of it, so it just looks like light. And that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like an arrow, almost like an arrow star-shaped thing that flies at the enemy. It's got little discharges here, you can see, with like these little bits, and it'll do just straight damage. So it'll be her own ranged attack that she can use with these. But to differentiate it from spells, these artifacts, they don't use AP, which is really nice because AP is valuable. It recharges slowly, and when it gets low, you get very susceptible to attack. So with artifacts, you can attack without risking losing all your AP. The downside is that artifacts don't have many uses. They use up their own Valak reservoir very quickly. But they do recharge. They don't recharge usually in battle unless you have a special augment to the item itself. But after the battle is over, when a new battle starts, they'll be fully recharged. So think of like a D&D item, more or less, in that they recharge every time you do a quote-unquote long rest. Now, those of you who have been looking at this image may be wondering, what is this little circular dude up here? Well, that's called a sphere, and spheres are pretty much these little companions that artificers make and have been making for a really long time. They're almost kind of your, like, if you can think of a wizard has a familiar, artificers have their spheres. Everyone usually makes one because they're super handy. They can carry things, they can move things, they can monitor stuff for you, and sometimes they even do work, like, using magic. And in lots of cases, they can defend you. So in this case, Aniya has her little light sphere here. So it will actually simulate pretty much an infinite version of this Valak lens, but weaker. So how that works in the game is that every unit has a secondary attack. For unarmed units, such as like monks and whatnot, they get secondary fist attacks. But there's all these different opportunities for pretty much any unit to get some kind of cool secondary attack. They pretty much, the way it works is that you do your regular attack, and right after that, your secondary attack happens. So you kind of get 2 attacks in one before the enemy can even retaliate. Now usually secondary attacks are weaker, but in her case it's pretty much a little secondary spell attack.
Alright, we got a question from Discord. So Mr. Blonde said, not sure if coincidence, but is she going to carry a sword in her back as a witcher?
She's going to have a sword, but it's kind of the joke that she just uses it for peeling potatoes. It's sort of a tradition for her family to carry swords because they have this, like, I mean, they have a history of being sword fighters, and we're gonna get to these guys over here. But yeah, that's actually this drawing here. That's actually just stuff behind her. So she carries her sword on her hip, and she usually has a short sword. So she's not going to be a very good sword fighter actually, until she maybe gets an artifice one. Hint, hint. Because there are artifice swords that literally act as artifice weapons, and so that's another part that's going to be added. But no, she will not be like a witcher actually. Artificers, they're more like, in a lot of ways they're kind of public servants. They like to develop equipment for people to use in multitudes of ways. So healing staves, for example, big draw from these guys because healing is really difficult in the Nyserian world. You effectively have to be a savant to understand life, right? To be able to, simulate the healing process. And so having these staves, which, over laborious amounts of time have been made to simulate healing, really popular. So those are the advents of these artificers. So they're definitely not like witchers, because witchers are like mercenaries for hire who kill when it's convenient and there's money in it, right? But now getting on to like redesigning how she looks, because if you look at her right now, this is her current sprite. She doesn't really evoke an artificer. She's in leather armor, which was kind of her original design when I wasn't really sure what her character would be. She's got some neat gear. She's got this little necklace and her scarf, but it doesn't really evoke artificer, right? So I'd kind of been thinking like, well, how do I differentiate them? And Lilette had this great idea, like, well, she should have something floating around her, right? Or something like that. And so I thought, well, that's perfect. I have spheres in the game, so let's just make it so that artificers have spheres. So I moved on to this very roughed out sketch of her, and that's what her new sprite is going to vaguely look like. We're going to change her hairstyle a little bit so she looks different than Sholeh as well. It's kind of a longer ponytail. Her hair is going to be cropped shorter, and I decided that I should incorporate more of the Irvani clothing to her gear, because just leather armor it's not really an Irvani thing. Like, even though I was kind of, when I was drawing this years ago, wanted to make a cool looking leather armor, it wasn't very useful for actually world building. So I decided to go back to some of these other Irvani designs I'd use and realize, oh, I've got this great Eidoric looking Archmage look. That would be a perfect way to incorporate into her design and give her a more maybe newer looking one that she styled herself. She's added little bits and baubles to, and makes her look more magical. And also add her tools, because really what shows off an artificer is your tools, right? So she's going to have just this bandolier belt of all these cool tools that she's got with her to show that she's always working on things, always, mixing up new artifacts to use. And yeah, so her face is going to stay the same. I really liked her facial design, and I'm going to keep that. But that's really where we're going with her change in style. Another thing, though, is that we've been discussing how horses work with her, because artificers, you don't really think of like artificers riding around on horses. And again, this is kind of a holdover to the early designs, in that I was kind of emulating a lot of Fire Emblem 4, and that you had the main character and his sister was a horse rider who also used staves. The what are they called? The troubadours of the old games. But and so that's why she was always on the horse, because that was kind of what I was emulating at the time, and it seemed befitting. But as I developed the world and whatnot, I kind of felt like she didn't, not that she didn't need to be on the horse, but I needed to make an actual proper like artificer who's ground based. But again, Lilette had this great idea. Well, why don't you make her get her horse in the village? And so we're going to be changing that part of the prologue as well. So we're going to introduce mounting and being able to change mounts. And that's going to change her sprite from her little ground-based one to her mounted one. And you get to see that she's got her horse in the village and junk.
And troubadours in Fire Emblem, says Mr. Blonde, are honestly one of the best units. I would agree.
Yeah, they are. They're super handy because they have high movement and they can heal. They typically don't fight in the older games, at least the GBA games, until they get an upgrade. But in Fire Emblem 4, they could use swords. But even then, like, you know, I think the problem was really that it didn't, more than anything, right, that people weren't getting what she does. And I think evoking that she is a artificer will help that she can both fight, but her support abilities are far more useful. And to focus on that, I wanted to add another item to the game, which is a summoning item. So summoning is something that I just added to the game, so now I have all sorts of, I have all the code done more or less. So I want to add actual summons to the game, and one of them is going to be this Flame Wisp. So you can see these little weird guys here. They're going to be the next newest summon that Aniya can use. A big qualm that people had with the first battle in the prologue is that you have very few units and not a whole lot of options to deal with these Thracian raiders. And so I thought, well, what would be a great way to do this but introduce the ability to summon. So you can summon 2 of these little guys at a time. They can't take many hits, but they're enough to dish out some damage to these Thracian raiders and feel like you actually have more of a stance in the world. And again, like, also evoking this, like, these are Irvani. They're advanced. They have highly advanced magical technology. They are fire aspected, so she summons fire wisps. And her gear looks like she's from Irvan, rather than just any old person with some leather armor. So those are the big changes we're going to have for Aniya. Her personality is going to stay the same. She might mention her gear more often or talk about the sphere, since that's going to be her little buddy. We got to think of a name for this little dude, since why wouldn't you name your little companion sphere? But on top of this, there's going to be changes to skills as well to better reflect that they are an artificer.
Well, I think we already have several ideas from our amazing audience. Catchy said, troubadours. Okay. We do have a question though. Emphasis. Important question for Aniya. So the summons, if they kill, damage, or do anything, and then will Aniya gain XP, or is that a sunk cost?
No, so anytime you use an item that has an ability, you get experience. So if you use them, I mean, there are some that you don't want to just like spam because they will break. Staves usually break when you use them up because they're high power equipment that there's no, like, the Valak focus in it is so intense that it just has uses and then it just busts. It can't be reused. But stuff like her weapon, it'll recharge. But you will always get experience when you use those items. And so it'll help Aniya stay up to pace with the other guys, because like every turn, Sholei and Artemir, right, can just take down units. But Aniya, if she's not engaging directly in combat, going to be summoning these guys and gaining experience, and hopefully by the end of that first battle everyone's about the same level. If not, having Aniya slightly higher would be okay, because, you know, when you're not in battle and you're not killing enemies and you can't be in the thick of it, you're inevitably going to be earning a little less.
Cool. Well, it looks like it was received pretty well, because we've got Mr. Blonde saying that they were worried that she wouldn't really get anything from that, but it sounds really good. And
yeah, and the summons. So the summons, these fire wisps, they're I'm going to test some things out, but they're going to be kind of a 2-part thing. They have very low HP. If anything, they'll have 1 HP. Like, they're barely existing in the world, right? They have a basic flame casting, so they can use the same casting that Sholei has. They won't have a whole lot of AP though, so they might get 1 or 2 uses out of it before they can really use it again. but I'm considering that when they die, they explode, which would be pretty cool. So you can literally like move them into combat, make them fight things, and when something inevitably fights it, they explode into a small explosion. So that would be a fun way to like make her very powerful, actually. But again, you have to use that wisp staff carefully. You can't just use it a bunch of times because it will break. So I think that answered that question. Was there another one, Lilette?
I actually have to fix a mic issue, at least just in Discord. I have it amped up for YouTube right now, but I was gonna say if you go back to Aniya's portrait, the more sketchy one, like the one below it, it kind of looks like she has a different hairdo. Only because the
she does, yeah. So I erased all this like low hanging hair because it seemed too similar to, because a lot of people have been saying that she looks too similar to Sholei as well. So I decided to have like to kind of updo her hair a little more into a longer ponytail. You can see I sketched out the ponytail just a little longer, bobbed the bottom of the hair, and it made it seem more like she's this really dutiful, clean artificer, right? Like she hates a bad working environment, and if she's always working on stuff, she wouldn't want hair in her face, other than the cool little loopies, right? But yeah, her hair is very different now, and it kind of, I did a sketch of her. I was like, oh, I kind of like this longer ponytail better. So that will also be changed, just again to like differentiate these two. And you may have noticed these other sketches over here. But did you have any other questions, Lilette? Yeah, so other than Aniya's changes, I have also mentioned that I'm going to be redoing Sholei. So these two are the oldest characters in the game. They're literally the oldest sprites, oldest units I've added. They've both really been needing some updates. Aniya got a pretty big update a while back. Her older sprite was even rougher looking. This one looks fine, actually. It's just her gear doesn't reflect what she does. But Sholei's is old, and so I pretty much completely, his design isn't different, but his posture, everything else is going to be changed. So this is the new sketch that I'm going to be working on of him. You can see I did a full body one this time because I'm working on not just doing the upper torso, because I like adding in, what do their shoes even look like? What do their pants look like, right? And so he's going to be looking like this. The posture, I think, looks better. The anatomy looks better. Facial structure looks better. I'm trying to keep his overall kind of gentle, nice look intact, as well as like the open shirt. He's still supposed to be sexy Aladdin. So his overall design mostly staying the same. He's just getting a big touch up to make him look like he's not have this like weirdly puffed out chest and strange angle with the body, because this is all just old. So that's what this is here. It's going to be secondary to revising Aniya, honestly, because that's the more pressing issue, at least as far as like updates go. But you might also be noticing this character over here. This is their mom. So I decided to actually also add in what their mom looked like. She's a keeper. So in this current story, up to chapter 1, you guys don't really learn too much about what keepers are. That's what Sholei is. He's a keeper of the flame. He's as part of this order in Irvan that was established a very long time ago, and he's inherited that role from his mother. He didn't have to, but he chose to. And their mom is pretty famous. You can see on her, she's got actually both of the legendary artifacts of their bloodline. So she's got the bracers, and she's got the sword over here, which is White Flame, which we discussed in a Feature Friday a long time ago. And she also has a similar design to Sholei. Sholei definitely emulated his mom with the cut-off shoulders and the vest and everything, and the low-cut shirt, because he looked up to his mom, and that's just the culture that they lived in. So he took on the style of his mom 100%. I just thought it would be cool to make sure I have some kind of reference for her, because eventually she'll probably get her own story. She and all the other people that led up to this current one. It won't be as long and lengthy as the existing storyline, but it'll be like a bonus maybe like 3-chapter story. So, because she'll be in her prime, so she'll be just swinging away with White Flame, kicking ass, and taking names. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Other than that, I can also talk about. Let's see, I've got a list here. So, okay, so we talked about artificing, what it is, who uses it, how does it work. We talked a little bit about how there's 3 aspects to each artifact. There's typically metal, a gem, and the actual artificing work that goes into it. The medium, which is the metal, can actually also be wood if it's aspected, or other obscure materials, as long as you can inscribe into it to make those lines and then fill them with metal needed. But the big question I think some people might be wondering is like, what will it add to the game, right? And I also have been considering that myself. Like, where does artificing lie in the game, in the gameplay, right? And it's kind of a tricky one because a lot of it is world building based, right? Like, artificed items in this kind of way have not really been present in any Fire Emblem game. If anything, it's like maybe potions, and that's kind of it, right? Little kind of interesting knickknacks that you can use, but for the most part, you're just gonna cram as much experience onto your favorite units, give them the best equipment, and send them into battle. I think that the goal really with artifacts is to give players options if they want to use different tactics, honestly, because there's abilities and whatnot that just aren't accessible from magic. Lots of magic also uses resistance, so resistance in the game is resistance to magic, and if you're fighting a lot of enemies with resistance to magic, you might want to use abilities through artifacts or through mechanics in some cases that don't hit resistance, they hit defense, and so they occupy sort of the alternative to magic in the game. They also give players options for units that can use both magic and artifacts to conserve your AP. So if you have your powerful artifact, you can use it, conserve your AP, and then when it's necessary, just blow all your AP on a really powerful attack. So the goal is really to add versatility to how people approach challenges, and there will be plenty in the game, as people have noticed with how many units you face, and it will continue to get more complex as you progress. So I think having all these artifacts not only will add like a lot of just cool world building stuff, right? You'll come across a staff and it's like, what does this staff do? As soon as you get it, you're going to want to see what spells does it cause, or what new things can I summon with it, or does it give my units a buff that's really useful, right? Everything will be intended to be valuable at some point. There won't be any, the goal at least will be there's no chaff, right? There's no wasted space in equipment. Out their necklace and shoot a laser out of it, more or less. So it should be cool, it should be interesting, and it should be useful. That's where they'll lie in the game. You raised your hand again, Let.
Yeah, we had some temporary audio issues, so just want to signal that no one could hear you for a second, but all fixed now, I believe.
Okay.
And then, is my mic still pretty quiet for folks in Discord?
I can hear you just fine. Okay, well, since that pretty much covers artifacts for now, I wanted to get into what I worked on this week actually, and kind of finished up today. And I think I have the game going right now. So I'm going to show that off. So I've been talking about boats lately, and I got them to work. Boats have been in the game. They've been useful for enemies to transport units, but not useful for players because there's been nowhere to use them and no scenario to use them. But that changes in Chapter 4. So if we take a look.
Great job on the boats, by the way.
Yeah, I really like them. I added these docks in too, so the docks are now coded into the game. You can walk right on top of them and load into ships now. In the prep menu, which this won't show because it's actually in the testing space of the battle. I can even show the new map too, a little more in detail. This is one of the big cities in Avalon. This is Tashalin, and you can see there's all sorts of buildings all around it.
And we discussed before adding some kind of color coding, so right off the bat I noticed the green flags.
Yeah, so there's green flags here that indicates allies. So this whole map doesn't have a palette yet. The palette will change ever so slightly when you go from place to place. But so like this dome here won't actually be green. It's just a useful palette recolor option. It'll be like a kind of a grayish steel. But yeah, green typically means ally. So in the case here, you can see these green boats over here. They'll also be loaded up with allies, which will be approaching the shores over here. There's a lot of open water space because you're going to be fighting other boats. And you may be wondering, how do I fight another boat? Because I got my people in the boat, right? Well, yeah.
Well, you can keep on going, but I do have a question for you from Discord, so.
Okay, I'm going to cover this real quick. I'll just show off what it does, and then we can answer that. So, you can now select the boat here, and it shows who's inside of it. So, you can just pick the boat to move it, or you can pick units and make them act while they're in the boat. So, let's just do the boat for now. And you can see that it can't move very far in this leftward direction. And that's because I added in the storm tides to the game as well. And so it may be buggy right now. I don't think I've actually fixed it just yet. But if you don't have a wake finder, which like Diamond, who's the blue guy that we've seen in previous streams, if you don't have someone like him manning the ship, you will have a tough time if the direction of the water, the tides, is opposite to you. So can't move to the left very easily, and that's because the tides are coming in from the west in this case. In fact, let's take a look.
And then eventually that gold carrot that is on the ship, I think we should have it just a little bit above, hovering, and then just like bouncing up and down. The question from Discord is, do we have a terrain advantages? For example, unit that is stepping on a build terrain will gain more defense or something like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. So you can see up in the upper right there, you've got the little feather shows your bonus to evasion, the little shield shows bonus to defense, and the boot shows how much movement it takes. So all of these little villages, they're more or less the same. The market doesn't give any defense, but if you jump to the warded castle here, you get a huge defense to both evasion and defense in general, and it even has its own HP. So every terrain tile is unique. So that goes for cliffs. Like cliffs here, you can't ascend, you can't move past cliffs, so that's why the movement is really high on it. Effectively anything that's movement 20 can't be moved through unless you have special abilities, magic, etc. But yeah, and that goes for all this stuff. So you got encampments, you've got forests, you've got hills and mountains, all of which they all have their own cool bonuses. And one of the new ones that was added is barricades. So these Sartians, they cut down this forest here. You see there's a little logging camp over here. they cut it all down and they made barricades for your inevitable landing. So there's all these little spiky, logs over here that's been stuck into the beach. So that was a brand new addition. I'm really happy with how it looks. And they even did it over here on this temple, because the temple does not have a gate, and that's intentional. It's not meant to be a castle, even though it looks like one. It looks very ominous. That's because it's an ancient temple dedicated to the old cults that used to live here, and so that it's made of really tough stuff, and it's never broken down, and so that's why it's still there. But it's also hard to take apart, and that's why they haven't been able to put a proper gate into it. So it'll be heavily defended still. I don't have any units on this battle just yet because I've been testing the boats. But I'll do one little demonstration here. So you can see I can select the unit, select the ability, and it'll even launch a fireball. So you can, they're straight up like fight in boats while you're moving around. And then when you go back to the menu, you can see Cholet's been used up, so you can't use him anymore. But you can still move the boat around. Woo. And the little lines here, that's just debugging stuff. Yep, and it didn't even move right, so whatever. Okay, we have questions?
I just hope that none of those units sleepwalk. And just like fireballs their own ship.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of problems that arise among like spellcasters, right? You have a bad dream and you're shooting lightning all over the place. I feel like that's not touched on enough actually in fantasy, of like wizards with bad dreams. It's probably why they live in their towers.
And then Mr. Blonde said they hope the battle on the beaches is just as intense, because I kind of nodded towards the barricades having like a D-Day feel to it, and Mr. Blonde was just saying that amphibian invasions especially are something that they really enjoy, and I concur. I love that you have to tango with the terrain.
Yeah, in fact, I can show you from the development window. So this is the unit placement. So it's going to be bristling with enemies. You've got a whole line of defenders with their archers and their shock troops just waiting for you to land on the beach. So you got flyers that are going to harass you along the way. A whole bunch of Veltwinny flyers that you're going to have to deal with. So it's going to be quite the engagement. You also have an option to infiltrate, which it'll be more clear in the game when you see it. But you also have the option to infiltrate through the ridge here. So it's going to be harder. You have to fly units in, and it means that you won't have as many flyers defending your ships. But it is an option to try and, harass them from both sides, more or less. And you'll have lords who want to do it one way and lords who want to do it another. And choosing either side will build or lose favor. So another usage of the dialogue system in action. So should be pretty cool.
That mountaintop is perfect for anti-air units.
Right here?
Nope, the one with all the flyers.
Oh yeah. I like the idea of just a bunch of Rook flyers just literally perched on this mountain, right? Waiting for you to show your soft white underbelly so they can swoop in and attack. And that's what I'm working on. That's what I have planned for all next week is there's been a lot of bugs with the aerial system, and it's mostly because it's not finished. Even though it's accessible and there's lots of code that's been done, it's a little buggy, and the NPCs can't really utilize it properly. So all next week is going to be that. I got the ships done. I'm very happy with how it worked. There's a few little bugs that might crop up here and there, but otherwise it's working swimmingly so far. But the aerial combat really needs to be fleshed out and tested more than anything. I need to test it, and this battle is going to be perfect for it, because you're going to have all these flyers that are going to try and evade your ships so they don't get attacked, and they're going to fly down and attack you, all sorts of stuff. So it'll be really fun. I actually recently started coding in a new item that you can use for flyers specifically. They're called Rook darts, and they're more or less a bundle of like old school looking Roman plumbata, which are these darts effectively with a big weighted piece of lead on them. And the Romans would throw them, but Rook will just drop them on people. So they just grab this bundle and then they just drop it onto a bunch of people below them. So I'm adding in the code so that when you ascend up and fly over someone, you can pick a spot and use that item, and it'll just drop a line more or less of them. So it should be pretty interesting to see not only how it looks and works, but it'll give me plenty of kind of material to test out the aerial system with, because it needs work.
Mr. Blanche says, that sounds like the Ogren from Dark Tide when he throws a grenade.
Yeah, the grenades are usable as well. So you can just straight up drop grenades down on, you know, just these awaiting forces that have no way to fight back unless they have other aerial units or special abilities amongst their mages to target flying units, because otherwise you're defenseless. But of course, like, flyers can't stay up in the air forever. Their AP drains as they fly, and so eventually they have to descend. But and sometimes they'll descend precariously if they just do so without any AP left. So it should be pretty cool. As long as it works. It might be a nightmare to end up coding, but so far I don't think it'll be too bad. This is also a smaller map, so those of you who have played the latest one, the chapter 1, probably have noticed that it's freaking huge. It's a big old map with a lot going on. This is a relatively smaller one. By like Fire Emblem standards, this is still a big map, but this is considerably smaller and more straightforward, at least like with the size and goal and whatnot. But it's been a nice break from just like the massive, huge, you know, almost mythical battles that I've been doing up until this point. So this one is very much more like, okay, we're in the thick of the war now. You're invading, you're now the invaders, and that means you have to take some hits trying to do so. So yeah, that's what's going on, guys. Other than that, I don't think there's too much else to show from the development, other than the spells which are available in the game right now. So.
Well, thanks so much for sharing with us. And any questions from the audience, both YouTube and Discord right now? Oh my gosh, Red Star! Red Star from YouTube is in here, and I had oh, I have neglected. Here, I'm gonna throw a bunch of hearts at you, Red Star. Okay, so first question for Mr. Blonde. Any other questions, or any other characters, sorry, that you're actively planning to change their art or design? Because we've got an updated version for Sholei, so...
Yeah, so these two are definitely my big target ones because they're the oldest, but for the most part I'm pretty happy with most of the characters. If I'm gonna do any like revisions for any of them, there probably would be one for maybe Perrine, but even then, I pretty much like her design. I think the only thing I might do with her is because like I do want to eventually have like the main lords, they change their attire as they go to different places. It won't be the case for everybody, but for a few of them, I want like if they go to the northern continent, that Perrine is like, she's not going to wear her Avalonian gear if she's in Kuldar. She wants to wear their cool like shawls and gear and whatnot, so she'll change how she looks, stuff like that. But as far as like complete revisions, I can't think of too many characters that are just like really hurting for a redesign. Only one I can think of is maybe Carlin. He's another new Chapter 1 unit that his armor, his overall like posture, it needs a little work. He's another old character that could probably use a little bit of work. But in general, most feedback has been that people like how he looks, and so it's not super pressing to change anything for him. There is another character that I just need to finish. He's a very important character to the story in general. But I think before I do any other big revisions, I'm going to work more on the backer characters, because I only have one of them down, and she looks great. The character turned out wonderful, but I really got to focus on getting those backer characters done, because for one, I want the designs worked out and drawn so that I know where they'll show up in the game, because lots of times where they show up depends on where you are. So that's probably going to be my focus before I do any other big revisions. But these two definitely are going to get a touch up.
Ooh. Red Star just said Friday payday. I gotta say I love Fridays also. Alright, let's see here. Usually at the end of all of our streams, we will do we'll take like a funny question. I think one of the first questions we ever took was which D&D monster we would be, and then I think we both chose goblinoids for each other. So yeah, so you guys come up with like a silly fun question. It doesn't matter how strange it is, we're gonna answer it. We're gonna try our best to answer it. Also, while they're thinking one up, what music are you playing, Tony?
Yeah, so Adam has been very hard at work adding all sorts of great tracks to the game right now. And what we're listening to right now is the house theme for Kuldar. So it's very relaxed, very homey sounding. And this is it's a long track. It's one of the most complex ones because there's not really any solid cultural reference that I have for the Kuldari. They're not really anything from our world, and so I had to think of like, okay, here's this amalgamation of possible cultures and instruments that I would like to see in it. Go wild, Adam. And so he worked on this one for about a week and a half with me, just shooting back ideas and some things I was like, not sure about this, not sure about that, and it turned out great. It's so it's I don't have a name for it just yet, but right now it's just called the Kuldar house theme, and it'll play whenever there's a delegate from Kuldar, or typically if like Perrine herself is just like relaxing with someone, then it'll play this theme because it's meant to be calm, relaxing, and chill. So we also have some other ones though, and they sound really cool. The other one is the battle theme for the Kuldari, which is not actually like Kuldar in general, but it's more the people that they use as their scouts and defenders of the region, which are called the Gwaithir. And so that's a really great one. I could probably play that if I have it in my I don't know where the downloads. Do it later. But I'm gonna do a big after like I have this big list of tracks that I'm having them do, because we do it in blocks. And so once this block is done, we're going to do a showcase on all the new music that got added to the game, because it's pretty fantastic.
Can you turn up the volume on the music? And maybe start from the top? Because it's been in the background, but I've barely heard it. Okay, that's perfect. Oh. Okay. Perfect. Can you turn up just a smidgen? question. We usually take it from the audience, so anything you've got in your brain, just put it on Discord or YouTube Live. We will try to answer it. We never know what you guys are gonna throw at us, but you know what? We will accept it. And then everyone's chiming in from Discord here. They really like the music.
Yeah, everything that Adam makes is just absolutely fantastic. I've been really happy with all of the recent tracks he's done.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who backed or did an add-on for the OST also. And eventually, you know, we want to do a vinyl because we're a big fan of vinyls, so eventually, it might be a thing where after, because this is like gonna be a trilogy, right? Lords of Nysera is gonna be a trilogy. There's gonna be game number 1, 2, 3. That's our hope. It'd be cool to have like a vinyl compilation of all of the tracks, which would probably be like 60 some songs all in one.
It will probably be a lot by the time that's done, yeah, because unfortunately there will probably be a few songs that are licensed, right, that we can't include in the vinyl, but all the stuff that Adam makes for us, it'll be in some soundtrack eventually. Some vinyl that people will be able to, you know, purchase. It'll be like probably, I don't want to say the only merch that I'll do, but it's definitely my big one, because I'm not a big fan of merch, but I love me vinyls, and it would be a real shame if this didn't get turned into one. So
well, lucky enough for the merch fans out there, I'm a big fan of merch. I love it all. I spend ridiculous amounts of money on merch, so yeah, stay tuned on that front. We do have a question from our audience. This is going to be the final question to wrap up the stream. It is, and this is submitted by Mr. Blonde. If you could have famous actors to voice Sholei and Aniya, these are the characters shown on the screen here, who would they be?
that's tricky. So I actually don't have like a really good knowledge base of voice actors, right? But I can I can reference my favorite characters probably, and say like, oh, they would do a good job with this person, even though I don't know who the voice actor is. So I'll have to think about that for a second. But
I'm definitely voting Alcina for Sholei, of course.
who?
Alcina.
Who's that?
He's a wrestler.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. That's a joke.
yeah, he's not the wrestler type.
I know Sholei's a bit of a pacifist, right? Like
Yeah, he definitely is. He does not like killing people, and let alone hurting them. And so the idea of him being like John Cena or whatever, hilarious. Dang, I wish I honestly had a better answer, but
we could get some feedback from the audience, like who they think would make great voice actors for Sholei and Aniya. Oh, we already have folks. Mr. Blonde, I've never seen Lazy Speechless.
the thing is, like, I'm normally I have like a pretty good bead on visuals, right? But auditory, and especially like accents, I really lapse on in world building, because the reason I struggle with it, right, is because all accents that we know of are only from our world, right? So how do you come up with like an Irvani accent, you know? Like, I'm not really sure how that works, and it's something I really struggle with. So I already have trouble with that, so even matching like a person's voice to Sholei, for example, real tough for me.
Okay, we got Angelina Jolie for Aniya.
She would probably do a great job, but Angelina Jolie is like a badass in everything she does. So, but she does have that like serious voice. Yeah, I could see that. That would probably be a good choice for Aniya.
Okay, Sholay for next time. Next stream, you gotta come up with somebody.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh god. For Sholay.
Got to get to Avalon.
Oh, actually, Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt for Sholay. That's, Discord said.
I thought for a second, like, who's a really nice actor? Keanu Reeves. Oh no, he'd be a terrible voice actor for him.
Keanu Reeves. Well, that covers our stream today. Thank you so much for joining us for Feature Friday, and thanks so much, Lazy, for just showing us what you've been working on. You've been working away with all of these new features, especially with the ships, and we're really excited to see them. And then awesome upgrades for the character portraits, and we look forward to more art. We love your art.
Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. So for future, there will not be a Speaker Sunday because we're going to be busy this weekend, but we will be doing a Wreck It Wednesday because I don't think we have anything going on Wednesday, right?
I don't think so. I think that's a go. Yeah.
Yep, so we'll be doing Wreck It Wednesday, probably doing some of this new Artificer junk. So can look forward to that, and hopefully by then, if I did it and it's working, that'll be part of an update to smooth out that prologue and make it more fun. So for at least for people who like Aniya but don't know what she's supposed to do. So yeah, thank you everyone for showing up. Thanks for tuning in and listen to me ramble about my favorite game ever. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you all. See you next time.
Bye bye.